the screen until here.
Okay.
And so we're live now. We're recording, but it seems like a recorder. Like, hey, we're at Timeline of Success behind the scenes. I want to get right to it. I think we've got everything tuned. And today we have Nickolas Hernandez, PhD from Chapman, his honorary, and he's an artist in Laguna Beach. So we're going to go into it. Nick, welcome to Timelines of Success.
Thank you, Bill. I'm honored to be here.
Or sorry, I said Nickolas. The reason why I call him Nick, I've known Nickolas or Nick since I was 3 years old.
Nick is fine.
3 years old. It's a long time.
Oh, the people that know me and that I'm closest to call me Nicky.
Both of our roots go into deep Orange County. I mean, deep compared to what it is today. Early Orange County, really, our day was early Orange County. Grew up in Santa Ana Valley High School, married my sister, and we've known each other ever since I was 3, a little kid. Nickolas, Nicky Hernandez has been on from Common Sense, has been on. It's his son, and Josh is his grandson, and it's a wonderful experience. So Nick is our first artist in about 70 interviews, the first artist. So Nick, tell us, this is about your timeline. Tell us what you do right now and how you got there.
Well, now I am a sculptor. I specialize in carving wood, even though I do figurative portraiture, in other words, busts of people. And I do figurative. The human body is my specialty. And I do public art. I just finished 4 years as an art commissioner in Laguna Beach.
That is the art, Laguna Beach. We could talk about Laguna Beach. Tell us a little bit about Laguna Beach. That is like the hub of the art in Orange County. It was for a while.
Absolutely. It's one of the hubs in all of Orange County, or all of Southern California. LA and San Diego have a very strong, also Riverside, but Laguna Beach is a spectacular town of 24,000 people with 24% of the income of Laguna Beach is art-based. It's the highest in the nation.
And it may have been even more early on.
It may have.
I'm sure it still is.
Well, with our festivals, and that includes the gallerists and all the tourists that come. The next municipality that comes close is Miami with 11% of their entire income. And so the feds did a study. I got these demographics when I was an art commissioner. They did a study on Laguna Beach and other art communities, and now there are thousands of municipalities around the country using Laguna Beach as a template, doing art festivals, building art live-work studios, and encouraging artists because it brings income and a wonderful, beautiful vibrancy to the community. And it's very uplifting to have developed highly skilled artists in your community, and now it's happening more and more.
I know Reno is trying to do the same thing. With the art community, they have there's one building that they've gone into and really created a place for artists similar to Laguna. But Laguna is such a magical place.
And we have a history in, the early 20th century, 1910, like that. The plein air artists, for some reason, they would gravitate to Laguna Beach because of the beautiful scenes, the beautiful beaches. So, in the development of painting, in the late 19th century, painting had developed itself so it was photographic. So they could paint just like a photograph. So then it started to break up into Impressionism. And also the mind, science had gotten to the point where we could pretty much define material-wise the entire universe about that time. So suddenly the cutting-edge cultures were going inside. They were starting to investigate the interior of ourselves. And that's when Impressionism and abstract art started to happen. So Laguna Beach was one of the places in the world, along with Paris, that really was a magnet for artists, and that, with the artists being there, a lot of people also were drawn to practicing and studying the arts. So Laguna Beach has a marvelous history, very precious history.
Right, and if you look at the architecture of Laguna Beach, it goes back into the 20s and 30s with a lot of that style of architecture still there today.
Absolutely, and we take care of our precious buildings. We spend a lot of energy, and our city council has done a great job in protecting our historic buildings.
In the historic, and with a mix of a little Spanish architecture hooked in.
Absolutely.
I mean, those are the two. The 20s and 30s is when California really had some growth. It was a a playground for those who could go down to Laguna back in those days.
And one of the things that I'm very proud of that a lot of people don't notice about Laguna is when you drive into Laguna, you'll notice there are no moving signs and there's no neon signs. Everything has to be backlit, and you can't have anything move, even a clock. And so if you go to the other towns, the surrounding towns, it's like going to a circus with all these lights flashing and moving signs and things. But there's a very quiet elegance to Laguna as you drive through. It's very
very back in the 20s and 30s. I'm very much so.
Yeah.
The streets and the layout and the hills and the ocean and Main Beach.
We protect the views.
Magnificent sunsets.
Unbelievable. Yep.
But what a place. So that's a natural draw for artists. So tell us a little bit more about your art and then how you got there, Nick.
Well, I had my first sculpting lesson when I was 7 years old. My father was an artisan himself. He was mostly into construction. He was an ex-Marine, and he fought several...
Yeah, I wanted to mention your dad.
Yeah.
I wish I could interview him, but he's passed now. We interviewed Earl Conrad, who was at Guadalcanal. But your dad was a Marine at Guadalcanal, was also wounded both at Guadalcanal and at Pearl Harbor.
Yes, and he also fought 2 other battles where he wasn't wounded, at Bougainville and Wake Island. Vicious battles. And yeah.
Unbelievable. You know, back then the Marines were very small. And he was in the Marines before the war broke out.
Absolutely he was, and they were the spearhead always. And
the other thing is your family is multi-generation California.
Yes.
Way back.
We have,
and you still have Latino blood primarily, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's I describe myself as a Chicano, which means Northern Mexican, because we have relatives who were here before it was a state.
Right.
They hung out with the Figueroas and the Sepulvedas and all these other major Spanish and Mexican.
You were from California, original California.
Yes, I was born in San Francisco, and then because my father was in the Marines and he was stationed there, and then I came to Santa Monica up until 7.
That was right after the war.
Right after the war.
First of the baby boomers.
Yeah, I was, and then moved at 7 years old to Santa Ana, California, and to Orange County.
Was your dad still in the Marines at that time?
No.
Oh, okay. Because there is a big Marine base here, 2 of them. It used to be.
Right.
Yeah, Camp Pendleton and, of course, later than there. And El Toro used to be here, too.
Right. So from 7, I started, grammar school. My grandparents raised me, and I felt incredibly lucky. Santa Ana was a very wonderful town. It was a rather well-to-do suburb of L.A., really.
Oh, yeah.
Time.
It was its own little enclave.
And
where the business industry after war went in Orange County.
Right, and Santa Ana, and it still is a great town, but it was a lovely town then. And one of the turning points of my life, which eventually took me to Laguna Beach, when I was 9, I read something about surfing. And I went to my grandparents, and I thought I didn't have any chance at all. But I said, Grandma, Grandpa, do you think I could have a surfboard? And they looked at each other and they said, sure. I couldn't believe it. I was ecstatic. So I had a surfboard made, and almost every weekend they took me down to Huntington Beach, Seal Beach, Newport Beach, Laguna Beach, Doheny Beach. They took me and they enjoyed a weekend at the beach, a day or 2, and I would be out in the water learning to surf. So I was one of the very first surfers on this coast, and it shows. My son and my grandson are both big wave riders and expert surfers.
And your son was national champion for many years at skimboarding.
5 years.
National.
He was world champion.
World champion, correct.
World champion, 5 years, skimboarders. And Josh, my grandson, is a champion on both levels. He just recently came back from Tahiti, where he rode Chopu, the most dangerous wave on the planet. Huge.
And then he went right over to the East Coast to do Surfers Healing.
Right, because my son is one of the founders of Surfers Healing, and he and Josh, so proud of what they do.
Josh is your grandson.
Josh is my grandson, and they've gone all over the world to give for autistic kids surf experiences. And I'd love to talk about that.
Hey, I'm going to step back
Sure.
one more question about Santa Ana, and just maybe a personal question. Do you remember where you went to elementary school?
Yes, I went to Edison.
Edison, okay.
I went to Edison and then to Lathrop Junior
And
High.
Lathrop, you went to Lathrop.
I went to Lathrop and then to Santa Ana Valley. I was the very first
So you went from
graduating
Lathrop
class.
to Santa Ana. That's a unique.
Mm-hmm. No, Santa Ana Valley was a brand new school, and I was the first class that went all 3 years there and graduated.
Because you were the first of the baby boomers, so the whole West Coast is exploding right now. People after the service members brought their families to California, many of them, and that's where we had huge growth right after World War II.
Yes.
And you were there when all these new schools were opening up, and seeing the changes in Southern California.
And I was given a wonderful education.
So how did these
so
early
grateful.
days affect your art?
Well,
How did you move into the art side?
I think
Everything affects everything.
because of my father's influence, art was always on my mind. Even when I first went to Laguna and I was doing plumbing work, I worked for quite a few artists, and often I would take paintings and sculptures in lieu of payment. And so I had a nice little collection, and then also the exposure to these men and women that were fine artists obviously had an effect on me. I often say that the most important factor in me becoming an artist is Laguna Beach.
You know, first of all, let's clarify Nick's timeline. When he was young, he went and became an apprentice, became a plumber, but then he became an entrepreneur with his own business. I'll never forget when I came back and started my design, build, construction. He said, I only do work where I can see the ocean. And it worked. What a system to develop a company.
Well, yeah, I used to. Well, work was so abundant that either I had a beautiful view on a mountainside, or I'd be working right down oceanfront, and I didn't have to leave town for probably almost 15 years. There was so much work, and if the surf was up, it meant tools were down and we were out in the water.
Right.
And most of the
Even
people,
in the morning?
even in the morning, and the people, because often that's where the best surf is, but all of my customers, they were fine with that. They knew that we were surfers. They liked the work I did, that we did, and they were fine with it. And a great number of them were surfers.
Mm-hmm.
So often,
Plus, you got to work on some beautiful properties. I mean, just the quality of the property itself, the architecture.
yeah,
so
and
on.
that has an influence on my artistic life. I was in some of the most beautiful homes in the world, with some of the most beautiful views, and with some of the most amazing people. Right now, for instance, I'm working on a $400,000 remodel for a world-famous scientist, Dr. Joan Steffens, and her husband, Dr. Bill Steffens. I've been playing tennis with Bill for 30 years, and Joan Steffens runs the biology lab at UCI, and she's a world-famous scientist. So these are the people that, fortunately, I got to know, and they affected me, obviously, in great ways.
Now, that's a good point. You still have your business ongoing, but you still have your art, which is fabulous. So you're not pressured by the consumer on your art.
Well,
Or are you?
I'm a little different. When, one time I joined a group called the Laguna Canyon Artists, and I got a studio there. There's a wonderful, wonderful spot in the canyon. Right next to me there was an artist, and when we first spoke, she said to me, I spend half of my time marketing myself. And I didn't say it because it would have been rude, but I thought right then, yeah, it shows.
In her art.
And yeah,
you can't fully develop your artistic.
I decided right then and there I was not going to let it affect me. I'm in this for the purity, for the beauty of the art. To me, it's religious to develop.
Now, I remember years ago seeing one of your pieces being handed to Hillary Clinton, I think when she was still First Lady.
Yes, there was. I am related.
Where was that?
At the San Francisco Art Institute.
Okay.
And it was the last year of the Clinton's administration, and she was still the First Lady, but she had begun her first Senate run. And this was a $10,000 a plate dinner at the San Francisco Art Institute. And the Boxer family, which I am related to through a marriage situation, it's an interesting situation. Anyway, they all, including Barbara, they all call me Papa Nick. And so they came to town Barbara Boxer's son, who's an attorney from San Francisco, and his, at the time, fiance, now wife, they came to visit me. And they said, Papa, we want to commission a piece for the president. And I said no, because I didn't have the confidence that I had now.
It's a beautiful piece. I've seen the piece.
It is. It's quite, well.
I like the colors, the motion, and it came out amazing.
It's quite a beautiful piece. And what happened is I said no, because they get the best art on the planet, and I didn't have the confidence. But for a whole year, 1 year, I went to sleep every night thinking about it. I woke up thinking about it, because how often does a knucklehead like me have access to the court of the king?
That was early on. But not early on. You've been practicing art for a while.
I had been practicing art for maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 years, which is not that long. So I had had some success, and I was, been in some galleries and had a little, a few hits. But then one day I decided, am I a man or a mouse? I'm going to try to make a piece that would be high enough quality to be presentable to give to the president and the first lady. So I actually stole a drawing from Mondrian. I tweaked it, and I turned it into a high relief wood carving. And I used photos that I got of Chelsea. So I did a high relief wood carving of Chelsea Clinton.
It definitely has Chelsea's lines in it. That day with her age.
Oh, it does. It does have a resemblance. And I have her almost flying, leaping over mountains, because at the time she was traveling the world with her father, Bill Clinton, President Clinton, and they were all over the world. And so I thought it would be appropriate to sort of have her in an ethereal way, like leaping over these mountains. And I worked really hard at it, and it seemed, it's one of the first pieces that something very precious happened during this piece. That is, I started, and after a bit, it came alive, and it led me. And it suddenly, I started to realize that really what I'm doing is honing my skills for these precious times when something comes through me. Not through my conscious effort, but through the whole of my being, my subconscious, and all my history and all my skills. And by the way, all the construction skills that I learned play a very important part.
We talked about that pre-interview, about how the crafts were really the artists in the day, like 400 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even long ago.
Well, in the 10th century is when the word art, an artist, came along. And the Medicis came up with that name because of Michelangelo, where they started to, before that, the painters, the sculptors, the wood craftsmen, they were considered craftsmen.
Right.
And they really never used the word art, which separates from an ordinary craftsman into a separate exalted category.
Right.
I mean, if you look up the word art in the dictionary, the definition is anything done at the highest level. So
right,
it's
the art of anything, like the art of war, Sun Tzu, they talk about.
The art of cooking, the art of dancing,
right.
The art of writing, the art of war, the art, when it's, anything is done at the highest world-class level, that's art. So the need for the term fine art is almost redundant. Art in itself means something done at a very high level.
Well, Nick, this is your timeline. It's all about you. We're up to Laguna now. We've gone from Santa Ana, or your background, into Laguna, evolving where you are today. And we're limited on time, but we're going to have you back to do a deep dive into the art world and what's happening in the art world, and specifically what's happening along the coast. So for today, in tying it together here, what are you doing right now? And we can talk about this piece. And where are you going in the next few years?
Well, right now I'm working on a show at Concordia University. Now, I am one of the luckiest men in the world. A few years ago, Chapman University, Dr. Doty, the president, bought one of my pieces. And I was part of an art show there. And he came out, walked around the piece twice, and said, it's staying here. Since then,
is that Emergence?
That's Emergence,
okay.
And that piece I had taken to Florence, Italy in 2005, to the Florence Biennale, which is the Olympics of Art. And there were 890 artists from 72 countries, and out of 160 sculptors from 72 countries, I won the Medici Medal, which was a great honor. And so Chapman University bought it, and it's now in a very high visibility, wonderful spot on campus, and since then they bought 4 pieces. And 2 years ago, they did the most unbelievable thing. They gave me a PhD, and I went through the cap and gown ceremony, and I am now Dr. Hernandez, which I never dreamt of, never fantasized, which just lets really me know that you can go so far beyond what you think you can do. I never dreamt about this. And since then, now I'm doing a show October 22nd, 2014. I'm doing a show at Concordia University. And I'm now, the doors of academia have been opened to me. And I'm doing lectures. I do one next week at Chapman. And
Chapman's a wonderful school. Old-time Orange County school. I mean, it's almost tied down into you. It's one of the oldest schools in Orange County.
And
it was known as the teacher school, and initially.
They have the School of Educational Studies.
Is gorgeous.
Yeah, and they have 20 overseas campuses now. Dr. Doty has taken it into being an international, highly prestigious university.
It was always well known in Orange County, though. Always. There's such a gorgeous old campus.
And when I was 7 and first came to live with my grandparents, I lived 1 block away from Chapman for about a year until they bought a house in another part of Santa Ana.
Now, didn't your grandparents eventually end up, I meant to mention this earlier, I know they were down in Dana Point. Is it Dana Point area, or some of your family?
No,
some of your family's in Dana Point.
Oh, yeah, my mom.
Oh, your mom. Okay,
mom, yeah. But it was my grandparents were always in Santa Ana.
Right, okay.
And we're not in the same part of town where you grew up.
Right. Well, I had to.
Yeah.
Relationship there. So, very good. So, Nick, let's show us this piece. Let's put this piece up here the best we can. The camera's over there. This is just a piece in process. So tell us about this piece. That's perfect.
Can you see this?
There a second. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this is a yoga pose. It's called the scorpion pose. And I actually had a yogini, which is a lady that does yoga, pose for this, and I took pictures, and it was funny because her face would get beet red, just fire engine red after a couple minutes, then she'd stop, and then she did it again a few times. It's a very difficult pose to hold, and she's a rather advanced yogini, yoga practitioner. So now I'm going to surround it, frame it with black glass, because I'm doing a series of high relief wood carvings on black glass for Concordia University.
So the contrast of the wood, nature, and black glass will be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing those contrasts. I love your finishes and paint on your wood piece too. Some of the finishes you get or have got in the past, like the Chelsea piece.
Yeah,
that was a beautiful combination of colors.
It was very interesting how when I started sculpting, and I studied with a master sculptor, Thomas Richard Garcia, masters from the Chicago Art Institute, collected by the Queen. I mean, he's an amazing, brilliant sculptor, and that's why I luckily got his hands just before he couldn't work anymore. And for 5 years, I was with him day and night, and he is why I do what I do. But
now your breakthrough in art, you started art as a second path. I mean, you always were in the arts, but at the level you went to, where you are today, how old were you?
I was 46 when I
put the time. 40. That's perfect, because this show is all about baby boomers and transition. And you're the first of the baby boomers, and you transition, and you're still transitioning.
I was born in 1946, and at 46 years old, that's when I seriously took up sculpting. But I never thought I would be where I'm at now. I was hoping that it would be something that I would do as I aged and would like, and almost as a hobby, something like that. But the first day, I got a piece of wood, and Tom showed me how to clamp it down, and he drew the arch of a back, like a back of a lady, you know, and he said, take this out. So I grabbed a mallet and a chisel, and on the very first strike, I had an epiphany, and I suddenly knew what that word meant. My life completely changed. I knew that instant, I knew it, that I was going to do this the rest of my life.
That was your epiphany, that was your turning point.
I knew that I was going to be good at it. I had no clue how good or what would happen, but I knew that I had found my passion right in the one strike of the mallet. And there's a book, you know, you ask about favorite books.
You know, that's a good point to transition. We're going to transition, because this is your timeline.
Okay.
So we're going to have to come back, and we'll advertise it when you come back and do that deep dive into art and what's happening. So bottom line up front questions, and these are crazy questions for an artist as far as I'm concerned. So what do you use, a Mac or PC, and what type of smartphone?
Oh, I use a PC and an
Do
Android.
you actually have a PC you use?
Yes.
What do you use the PC for?
Oh, you know,
I know you got an Android phone.
emails and social
Yeah,
media and you know, research.
We're gonna down the road train you. Most artists use Macs.
Yeah. Well, you know, I developed a website, and the Florence Biennale, I was the very first artist that the internal committee that picks people, they went just to my website, and just from the website they approved me.
Oh, that's important.
And I was number
That's
one.
a social environment.
Yeah. So you know, the web has obviously changed my life, and it's an
Well, that would
important
be the
part
next
of.
question. What technology do you think? What technology is your favorite technology? It sounds like it might be the web.
The web, yeah.
And for the technology world, but you're really this art, the wood and sculpture. What you're doing goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. The practice.
It's an 8,000-year-old method.
Except for the application of the paints that you put on the
Right.
product, which is made. And
Mm-hmm.
you work in the molding business
Mm-hmm.
in the family too, with creating molds and systems and processes, which
Mm-hmm.
is part of the art. It's the art meets the plastics world, I guess.
Yeah, well, absolutely. To do replicas of my art.
Yeah,
I do limited series editions, and because
But you're right in making the model. You're making the mold. You're in the
Mhm.
you're in the facility of making the mold process. It's not like someone else is making it for you.
Well, your brother Jack, of course,
it's
has
a 50-year-old business.
taught me so much, you know, and of course we work together constantly on the molds, and you know, I wouldn't.
No, he's a master in his own mind. That's another interview for a master of mold making.
I would
You're
never
right there with
work
him.
with anybody else, but because
He's probably the best, one of the best in the world.
yeah, he's
There's not many people do what he's done and has the background. But anyway, very good. So driving on, what's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote would be one of my son's favorite quotes, and that's "Never give up." I mean,
That is your quote. I know that's your quote. Now, did Nicky in the song "Never Give Up"? Did that have some influence?
Yes, it did. Even though I think I've always been tenacious about whatever whatever I get into, I've always had that. And I mean, the thousands and thousands of lonely, scathing hours that I've spent in the studio.
By yourself.
Yeah.
Does time go by fast, though?
Oh, time sometimes stops. You have no idea how many times I walked out in the middle of the night thinking, "Oh God, it must be midnight," and I'd walk outside and the sun would be coming up, and I had completely lost track of time. Completely lost track of time, and when those are wonderful.
Isn't that strange how time just disappears?
It does.
And sometimes it goes on, but sometimes it disappears.
Well, time, as far as I'm concerned, is man's attempt at quantifying eternity.
Yeah, because time does move faster and slower. It's a strange phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
It's on motivation and desire and focus and what you're focusing on.
And it's a perception, yep.
Very good. So favorite books and authors?
One of the most important books in my life was The 7 Spiritual Steps to Success, Deepak Chopra. And I would say he and Hermann Hesse are my two favorite authors. And Hermann Hesse's favorite book is The Glass Bead Game, or Das Glasperlenspiel, which he won the Pulitzer for, and was his last and most major work. But Deepak, who is still alive and is
of course
one of my most important mentors.
Deepak is well known.
And because of him, I got deeper into meditation and deeper into yoga and Buddhism. But I've always been a follower of the Dalai Lama, and I've followed the Tibetan
culture
and form of Buddhism. But now I'm studying with the Theravadan monk. That's the mountain Thai tradition. I mean, they all study the same Dharma, the same teachings of Buddha. They're very little difference.
So very good. Now, since you're the artist, I'm going to ask you one more book. Is there an artist who you look up to or follow more than any other artist, or any specific artist? You probably have many artists, but is there one in particular in history?
I'd say Michelangelo.
Michelangelo. Oh, very good.
And I won
that makes sense after our early discussion.
Yeah, the medal, the international medal I won in Florence was called the Lorenzo al Magnifico di Medici medal, because Lorenzo al Magnifico in the 10th century was the nephew of the head of the Medici clan, and he's the one that discovered and brought Michelangelo into the fold. And that's when the word artist emerged.
Very good. In tying it all together, going into our final element, tying it all together, when you're not doing art, when you're not running your business, what do you enjoy doing?
Listening to my son sing.
Oh, that is probably the number one thing. Yes. And you like surfing, of course, in the water and the ocean and the
Yeah, I do that. I don't know.
But listen to Nikki sing. I agree.
I'm a tennis player, and I coached the high school tennis team for like 15 years, and I'm an avid tennis player still. I play a lot. So that's a part of my yoga.
A good tennis player.
Did
you play in high school? Did you play?
I've been playing since I was 7.
Do you play in the team?
Yes, I played.
I thought you did.
And when
I can remember seeing you in whites, all whites. Remember, you always had that whites on.
Right, forever. And well, I lucked out because my main teacher, once I got to be a young man, was Mike Wilson, and Mike Wilson won the national mixed doubles championship, and his partner was Billie Jean King.
Right. 20 years ago, you gave me lessons, the best lessons I've ever had. You could have been a coach.
I still am, actually. I'm still giving lessons.
I know that's one thing you do.
Yeah, I'm still giving lessons, and it's a lot of fun.
There are the Costa Mesa police flying overhead. So if you hear that in the background, no, but you used to. That's right, you used to coach.
Yeah, I coached Corona Del Mar High School
Yep.
for 3 years, and I had undefeated teams for all 3 years. Then I went to Laguna Hills, took them to their first CIF championships, and then to Laguna Beach, and had many undefeated seasons.
But now you're focusing in on the art. There's only so much
Well,
time.
the whole time I was focusing in on the art. Ever since I first started, it captured me, heart and soul.
Very good. So those are wonderful things to do on your time off. And you didn't mention surfing. Are you still getting in the water?
Not much, but my son had bought me a surfboard and a wetsuit, and I'm about to embark on a new stand-up paddling adventure.
The paddle, the big boards.
The
nice.
SUP, stand-up paddling, and it's great exercise, and I really do need to get back in the water. I haven't been in nearly as much, but there's only so many hours in the day, and my art, like this piece here, there's hundreds.
We didn't
of
go there,
hours.
but I know you've really focused on health your entire life, eating right. You were way ahead of the eating right crowd. I know that for a fact. I know I've studied it my whole life, but way ahead of that. We're not going to go there today. We don't have time, but I know that it's the gluten-free concept, eating healthy, eating good foods, fresh foods.
Supplementation.
Supplements.
And I'm 68, and
Are you not old?
I am 68.
Wow, that's right.
And I am in, knock on wood, incredible health.
Yes.
My joints don't hurt. I play hard. I play tennis with some really fine
We
players.
didn't even talk about Burning Man. You were at Burning Man last year.
Oh, yeah, I was.
I forgot. Living on the playa, you look really good.
Well,
you were so dark coming off the playa.
Well, the Burning Man is basically now 60, 70,000 artists,
Right.
mostly,
Or people in high tech from the Bay Area.
that
too.
come and build a city.
Right.
For a week, and it's super low tech, super high intelligence. It's the finest art on the planet is there, and on the artists, they come from all over the world, from Russia, China, all over Europe, Central South America. We get together and we celebrate humanity in the highest way I have ever experienced. I've never seen a fight at Burning Man.
Well, we'll bring you back and you can talk about the art and Burning Man. And that's also for Reno. That's one of our Reno specialties is Burning Man. That's where everyone stages from. It's very good, Nick. So in tying it all together, this is by far the most important question. For the listener, just the individual listener out there who's listening, from your interview, what is the number one takeaway? What's advice do you have for that listener? The takeaway, the advice from this interview.
Well, if you're going to pursue art, or actually anything.
I would say art. Let's focus in on that.
Okay, if you're going to pursue art,
older person, even baby boomer wants to get in, loves art.
Okay, well, Deepak Chopra said your most important life starts at 50, and it certainly did, because by the time I started at 46, by the time I was 50, I had developed enough to consider myself an artist, and then it skyrocketed since then. But here's a musical phrase: before you sing, learn your song. Be disciplined enough to learn your craft, your art, and learn it, stick with it, don't give up, and take it to the highest levels. It takes time spent, it takes the discipline and courage. it takes courage to be an artist, because at the beginning, it's not so good.
Well, I'm going to ask you an amazingly difficult question. This is a follow-up question. How do you know when you're good enough to go out and you've learned your trade?
When your work starts to buckle people's knees, when it hits them in the gut, and it drops their jaw, that's how you can tell. You know, to judge it yourself is almost impossible. When I look at my work, what I see always is all the flaws and the things I should have and could have done better. That's all I ever see in my pieces, and it's other people's response. And when people start to, you know, it's like if you're a musician and you sing a song and the place goes wild, you know you've done a good job.
So from the reaction of others, you know.
You bet.
Very good. So Nick, how can we reach you?
Well, I have a website. It's spiritformlaguna.com. I call my studio Spirit Form, which I know is an oxymoron because spirit has no form, but it's the attempt. And you can get me there, or LagunaNick@gmail.
Very good, LagunaNick@gmail. And I've got something just for you. You know, I've been holding AskHernandez.com. So what I'm going to do with that, I'm going to point that at your website. That's a real easy one to remember, AskHernandez.com. We'll point it right at your website, plus your website and all the notes, and we'll try to get some pictures, too, of some of your art, and we'll post them on timelinesofsuccess.com.
That's great, and then maybe Nick and I can both be a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, you got two Nicks.
Yeah, that would be great.
You're Nickolas Hernandez?
I'm junior, and he's the third.
He's the third.
Yes.
Okay. Well, very good. Thanks, Nick, for doing your timeline. It's a wonderful timeline. You and your son. Your son followed. I forgot what his number was, but if you Google Hernandez, you're going to find two Hernandezes. Not Google. If you go on our site and just put it in the search. So thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Bill. It's been an honor.
Very good. So I'm going to turn this off, and we're off. This is good, and this came out well.
What did you?
This is behind the scenes. We're going to turn off behind the scenes. This is live.
What did you think? Was that